In February of 2003, a man named Carlin Langley went for a fabulous night out at a gay bar in the heart of New York City. He was having a great time when suddenly he met a long-haired, bearded fellow who introduced himself as Mike Portnoy, aka the drummer of the band Dream Theater. And like some of you, I imagine, Carlin Langley had no idea who Mike Portnoy was, and he had no idea what Dream Theater was. However, if you do know who Mike Portnoy is, then you know that he is considered by many people to be one of, if not the greatest rock drummer in the world. And Mike spent no time telling Carlin Langley about all the things that Dream Theater had been up to. He told me he'd just come back from Japan where he'd signed an endorsement deal with a drum manufacturer. So sure, even though Carlin Langley had no idea who Mike Portnoy was or what Dream Theater was, how often do you get the chance to hook up with a bona fide rock star? So Carlin took Mike back to his place where, according to the New York Post, they were intimate. Then they fell asleep, and when Carlin woke up, he found no trace of Mike. He also found no trace of his wallet, his keys, or his cell phones. Realizing that his apartment had just been ransacked by Mike Portnoy, the drummer of Dream Theater, Carlin Langley got on the phone with his credit card company, who informed him that Mike Portnoy had already spent $1,000 on his card. And Carlin Langley was not alone in having this sort of experience with the drummer from Dream Theater. Between February and March of 2003, the internet became flooded with stories of gay men who were swindled by Mike Portnoy. Here's what one of his victims had to say about the con. I wanted to somehow get word to Mike that there's a guy in NYC who is pretending to be Mike, picking guys up at bars, restaurants, and on the street, convincing them that he's Mike Portnoy, the world-famous drummer from Dream Theater. He has all their music CDs, knows every beat of every song, and the words, and has Mike's schedule both past and present down to a T. He says that he's been struggling with his sexuality lately, thinking back to a molestation when he was 14, and has decided to give it another try to see if he can finally find happiness. After convincing them of who he is, and of his sincerity, they get it on, and at some point when they aren't paying attention, he steals whatever he can find from them. From me, it was my wallet, IDs, credit cards, ATM cards, social security card, etc. This impersonator's con was so good that he had actually managed to initially fool Chris Caffery of the band Savatage. And after he realized that he too had been taken in by this guy, Chris Caffery posted an update. Hello. It is April and snowing. The world hates America, and there is a Mike Portnoy imposter running around New York City. You may have noticed that I removed my post about Mike. It was for good reason. Although I have seen band photos and played festivals with Dream Theater, I never really knew their faces. My friend called me and told me that Mike wanted to say hello. This was last week. A few days later, in the city, I was introduced to who was supposed to be Mike. The guy had the whole bar fooled, me included. He obviously did a whole bunch of research on Mike and his career and family. He apparently had stolen his wallet and cell phone. He had his ID, so who was to know? And what really helped this guy fool Chris Caffery at first was that he just had such a good command of the details. The guy knew very serious business details and family matters of Mike's. He was even recognized by people as Mike Portnoy when I was with him. He held phone conversations on my phone with supposed mutual friends. It was a pretty good act. The ID, the Rolex, the drum companies, the phone calls. The guy was pretty convincing. Everyone in the bar was calling him Mike and buying him drinks and talking about his band. He even knew that we played a show together in Sao Paulo. Cafferty started to get a little suspicious, however, when he heard Mike Portnoy play the drums. I got into a room to jam with this guy last week and knew something was up. He was still hammered, but he was not a good drummer. I went online to Mike's site, and we noticed that although he looked similar, he was scrawny and had a space between his teeth that did not exist on Mike's photos. Chris Cafferty also wanted to make one thing very clear. Apparently, the guy was trying to pick up guys too. I assure you that he was not doing this in my case. I think I am pretty obvious in my ways. For a period of time, this Mike Portnoy imposter was becoming so prolific that he started to get a reputation around the city. Here's another instance recounted by Adam Newman, a stand-up comedian who worked his encounter with the fake Mike Portnoy into a bit.
This guy drunkenly stumbled up to me and some friends. My friend goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "The drummer from Dream Theater." That's how he introduced himself. He was so drunk, he pulled a bottle of pills, not out of his pocket, out of his pants. pants. They were in the front of his pants, in his waistline, no cap on them. Takes them down. My friend goes, "What are those?" And he goes, "Something bad." And I'm on YouTube looking at drum tutorials and concert footage, and I'm finding the drummer from Dream Theater, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, that's not the guy from last night at all. It wasn't the drummer from Dream Theater. It was just a guy saying he was a drummer from Dream Theater. And I told some friends the story. 3 friends of mine said, that same thing happened to me.
So this imposter basically did his thing for well over a month until on April 1st of 2003, he was finally caught in a sting that Mike Portnoy, the real Mike Portnoy, described as being a scene out of NYPD Blue. The capture of the fake Mike Portnoy begins with a musician named Ray Freeman who happened to be hanging out at a bar in the West Village called Finally Fred's. Ray needed a drummer to play with his band Block 16, and obviously he was ecstatic when Mike Portnoy agreed to do it. And at the same time, Mike Portnoy got Ray and the rest of his band to give him a place to stay using a sob story. He told us that his mother was dying of cancer, his wife was divorcing him, and that Dream Theater had cancelled its tour because of the war, so I kind of felt sorry for him. The ruse, however, quickly fell apart when it came time to actually play the drums. You can have all kinds of fake IDs and details about a person's life memories, but you're just not going to sit behind a drum kit and imitate the performance of a person who is considered by many to be one of the best drummers in the world. It's just not going to happen. And in Ray Freeman's words, he sounded worse than my grandmother. And that's when everything started to really click. He noticed that the tattoos on this guy didn't quite match up with Mike Portnoy's actual tattoos. He noticed that he had things missing from his apartment, and he looked online and he saw that there were reports of an imposter Mike Portnoy going around. So this guy calls the police and they make a plan to finally catch this guy. What they did was they had Ray Freeman pick up the fake Mike Portnoy in his car while he's on the phone with the real Mike Portnoy to coordinate where they're gonna wind up. They drive back to Ray's apartment in Queens, the police show up, and they get the fake Mike Portnoy, who is still at this moment insisting that he really is Mike Portnoy. It turns out that the imposter was a man named Anthony Mendez, whose picture he had, unfortunately, this is really the only picture that you can find of him nowadays. He was charged with criminal impersonation and grand larceny with $100,000 bail. And with all that, you would think that this would be the last we'd hear of him, but it wasn't! Anthony Mendez once again started up his fake Mike Portnoy scam in 2006. Mike Portnoy received an email from a concerned fan that he shared on his message board thinking, here we go again. This guy came over to my house the other day claiming to be Mike from Dream Theater. This guy looked like a wreck. He was clearly on some heavy drugs. I just couldn't believe that it would actually be Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater. You must be thinking this is a joke, but it's not. The guy maintained that he was Mike Portnoy the whole time he was hanging out at my house. I totally would have assumed this guy was lying, but he knew everything about the band. Tours, album covers, and their meanings, etc. Please tell me this guy was an imposter. I'd hate to think that the real-life Mike Portnoy is a drugged-out wreck. And of course, having dealt with this before, Mike Portnoy was sent in a bit of a panic, worrying about his family's safety, his reputation, but thankfully for him, this was the last time it appears that anybody had ever heard from the Mike Portnoy imposter again. So what actually did happen to this guy? Did he get caught again? Did he turn over a new leaf? I mean, if you ask me, considering the risky lifestyle this guy had and the heavy drug usage, it's very likely that Anthony Mendez is simply no longer with us. But we don't know for sure. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about that. Check out this other music tale of intrigue. See you next time.